The world was used to the rhythm of trade wars, tweets, tariffs, retaliation. But in 2025, everything changed. India, long seen as America's democratic ally, shocked the world by pivoting toward China. This wasn't a minor policy shift, it was a seismic realignment. Prime Minister Sharma and President Li Wei stood together in New Delhi, announcing a comprehensive strategic and economic partnership. The two most populous nations, once rivals, were now partners. Their pact spanned technology, finance, and security, a direct response to years of American economic pressure. The very policies meant to contain China and discipline India had pushed them together. America's attempt to isolate China had backfired, leaving itself on the outside. Both India and China felt targeted by unpredictable U.S. tariffs, which they saw as economic coercion. For years, the US played India and China against each other, using alliances like the Quad. But, as American tariffs hurt India's economy, New Delhi's priorities shifted. The threat from Washington's policies became more urgent than Beijing's ambitions. The world watched in disbelief as the old assumption, that India would always side with the West, crumbled. The partnership marked the dawn of a new era, Asia's giants shaping their own destiny, independent of Washington. The Asian century was no longer just economic, it was now political reality. India's decision sent a clear message. The American-led order was over. A new, multipolar world was emerging, forged by the very trade war that was meant to prevent it. The global balance of power had shifted overnight. The rivalry between the dragon and the elephant was replaced by a pragmatic alliance. The world's center of gravity was moving east. The post-Cold War era had ended, not with a bang, but with a handshake in New Delhi. The roots of this upheaval lay in America's own strategy. The America First era brought tariffs, first on China, then on partners like India. Indian industries suffered as U.S. tariffs hit steel, agriculture, and tech. Prime Minister Sharma faced mounting pressure at home, jobs lost, inflation rising, and accusations of bowing to Washington. The U.S. miscalculated, believing India's rivalry with China would keep it loyal, no matter the economic pain. But India valued its autonomy, not subservience. American tariffs felt less like partnership, more like punishment. The breaking point came when the US targeted India's tech sector, its economic crown jewel. Suddenly, America looked less like a partner and more like a competitor. The logic of siding with Washington collapsed. Shared pain from US tariffs became a stronger bond than old mistrust between India and China. The US saw the world in black and white, with us or against us. But India refused to be boxed in. The final round of tariffs forced India's hand. The cost of American friendship had become too high. India chose a new path, one that put its own interests first. The seeds of a new Asian order had been sown by America's own policies. The world's alliances were being rewritten. Washington's double-edged sword had cut too deep. Facing a wall from the West, India turned to China with a sweeping partnership. The deal went far beyond trade. It was a blueprint for deep integration. China agreed to buy Indian goods hit by US tariffs. India opened its markets to Chinese tech and machinery. Together, they aimed to replace lost US trade and create a massive, self-sustaining economic loop. Most alarming for Washington joint ventures in 5G, AI, and semiconductors. India and China pledged to break the Western monopoly on critical technologies. They would set their own standards, pool research, and build together. The pact included mutual support in global forums, forming a powerful voting bloc. Their first act, a joint veto of a US resolution at the UN. This was not friendship, but pragmatic necessity. Both leaders admitted their differences, but chose cooperation over confrontation. The era of choosing sides was over. India and China were forging an Asian way. A third path, independent of Washington. Their rivalry hadn't vanished, but a common goal now united them: resist American pressure and set their own rules. The world's two giants were no longer just competitors, they were partners in rewriting the global order. The balance of power had shifted and the West was left watching. India's partnership with China sent shockwaves through global alliances. The Quad, America's Indo-Pacific bulwark, collapsed overnight. India swiftly withdrew, canceling joint exercises and halting intelligence sharing. US-led infrastructure projects lost Indian support. Washington and its allies scrambled, their strategy in tatters. The US had assumed India's loyalty was permanent, but underestimated India's economic priorities. American tariffs forced New Delhi to choose prosperity over old alliances. The Quad's unity was shattered, leaving smaller Asian nations exposed and uncertain. Every country in the region was forced to reassess its ties to Washington and Beijing. America's coalition-building power in Asia was badly damaged. The dream of a US-led democratic Indo-Pacific was in ruins. India had charted its own course, and the regional balance had shifted for good. The world's alliances would never be the same. China moved fast to cement the alliance with real economic muscle. A massive currency swap stabilized the Indian rupee, shielding India from US retaliation. Chinese investment poured into Indian infrastructure, ports, railways, digital networks. Where America offered plans, China delivered cash and crews. The public welcomed new jobs and development, making the alliance popular at home. India and China began settling trade in their own currencies, bypassing the US dollar. This challenged the dollar's dominance and set a precedent for others to follow. A mutual support clause meant if one faced US sanctions, the other would help. The two giants had created a defensive economic alliance. America's tariff weapon was now neutralized. The economic axis had shifted east. The world's financial order was being rewritten. The US found itself outmaneuvered on every front. The India-China pact sent shockwaves through global markets. The rupee and yuan surged. The dollar tumbled. Investors questioned the safety of a dollar-centric system. US Treasury bonds sold off. Borrowing costs rose, and the Dow plunged. American tech firms, reliant on Asian supply chains, suffered steep losses. Meanwhile, Shanghai and Mumbai markets soared as capital flowed east. In the US, political backlash was fierce. Critics called it the greatest foreign policy blunder of the century. The public was anxious about America's diminished role. In India, the mood was triumphant. Asian century trended as people celebrated newfound independence. The alliance was seen as a victory, not a concession. Popular support made the pivot irreversible. The world's economic center was shifting, and America was left reeling. The new reality was symbolized by the Himalayan Chip Fab, a joint India-China semiconductor plant in Hyderabad. A $20 billion venture, it aimed to rival the world's best chip makers. For years, America used its tech dominance as leverage. Now, India and China were building their own. The plant was a declaration of technological independence. At the launch, Prime Minister Sharma declared, "Today, we become the creators." The project aimed to secure supply chains and end Western control over critical tech. US threats of sanctions rang hollow. India and China would now defend each other. The West's chokehold on technology was broken. The plant inspired the global South, showing a path to high-tech self-reliance. The rules of innovation were being rewritten in Asia. The world's technological center of gravity was shifting east. The US had lost its most powerful tool. The future of tech would be decided in Hyderabad, not Silicon Valley. America's tariff policy had unintended, irreversible consequences. Instead of isolating China, it united two historic rivals into a powerful bloc. Nearly 3 billion people, a vast market, and shared tech ambitions now challenge the West. The US never imagined a Sino-Indian alliance until its own policies made it reality. Tariffs forced India to see China as a partner, not just a rival. Shared grievance proved stronger than shared values. America's attempts to reverse course came too late. Trust was broken. The new era wasn't about inevitable conflict, but about the end of uncontested US dominance. The world was now truly multipolar, complex, unpredictable, and no longer centered on Washington. The India-China alliance was a cautionary tale of economic policy gone awry. In trying to put America first, Washington had hastened the post-American world. The tariffs meant to strengthen America had left it more isolated than ever. The global order had changed, and there was no going back.